So medium grain clastics, we typically have very high porosity. But what about fine grain? Yeah, like shale. Do we have a lot of porosity in shale? No. So, and that's basically because the grains are so fine that all the pore spaces get squeezed out, right? Did we talk about that yesterday? Yes. Just on the power. All right. So, again, shale is just basically mud, and it gets squished down, and it squeezes out all the water. And again, that pressure basically eliminates the porosity, squeezes out all the air and the water. So, if we have shale that doesn't have a lot of open pore spaces, how would that affect the movement of groundwater? So think about it like this. Let's say we had, here's our ground, and we have our topsoil at the top. Here's our topsoil. And underneath that we have our layers of rock. So we have sandstone. So that's really the shale. We'll move that down. Here's our shale. And then we'll put in the sandstone. Here's our sandstone. Now, as water's coming in from the surface, the topsoil is pretty loose. There's lots of spaces for that water to infiltrate. And it gets to the sandstone. Why doesn't that water hit the sandstone? It absorbs it, so that water keeps draining down to the sandstone. And then eventually the sandstone becomes supersaturated, and this is where we get our waters from. So those of you guys who have wells, that layer becomes supersaturated. What that means is all the airspace and the pore space inside the sandstone has become completely filled with water. But why doesn't we hit that shale? Where does the water go? Yeah, it can't go any farther, right? The shale doesn't have any porosity, so it doesn't allow the water to get through. We call that, this is the name I couldn't get down yesterday, we call that an aquiclude. Aquiclude, so it's a barrier to the movement of water. And this right here we call an aquifer. So aquifers are basically where we have, or where we draw a lot of our groundwater from. So yeah, so basically the shale is going to prevent the movement of that water. Now what's neat about that, you guys have heard of an artesian well? What? Artesian well. Anyone? This is the first time I've ever had a class I had no clue what I was talking about. Well, it's basically like this. In this system, we have 2 layers of shale and a layer of sandstone squeezed in between. And then we have water in the sandstone. We have supersaturated sandstone. Well, we already said the bottom layer of shale isn't going to allow that water to move down, is it? And then what's going to happen to this top layer? Can it move up into the shale? No. So then, as you keep adding more and more layers of dirt on here day after day, what happens to the amount of pressure in the sandstone? Yeah, it basically increases, right? The water's got nowhere to go. So it's squeezed under this really, really high pressure. And all it takes is for one little hole to be put into that sandstone. And because of all that pressure squeezing it, it's like having a tiny little hole on a water balloon. Right? And then if you squeeze that water balloon, that water starts shooting out the top, doesn't it? It's going to be very similar here. all you gotta do is drill down into that squeezed layer. You don't need a pump. The pressure from within the earth automatically pumps that water to the surface for you. And all you need to do is tap into that, and then it runs all the time. No need for a pump. I thought that was amazing. All right, so you guys don't care. All right. Yay.